Every morning began before the sun dared to rise. Picture this. A family of 8 crammed into a one-room hut made of wattle and daub, sticks and cow dung plastered together. The floor was bare earth, often shared with pigs and chickens. No windows, just a smoky hole in the thatched roof. Young Thomas, only 12, rubbed sleep from his eyes and stumbled outside into the freezing mist. His job? Empty the night soil bucket into the communal dung heap. Why? Because that waste would later fertilize the fields. Peasants lived in their own filth, yet believed it held strange power. Superstitions ruled everything. If a black cat crossed your path at dawn, you might spit 3 times and turn back, or risk the devil's curse for the whole day. Thomas's mother whispered prayers to Saint Christopher while kneading bread made from gritty rye flour that often hid ergot fungus. Eating it could cause hallucinations, burning sensations, and even make entire villages dance uncontrollably in St. Vitus dance. Life started strange and only got stranger. Out in the open fields, the real work began. Peasants didn't own the land. They belonged to it, and to their lord. Under the feudal system, they owed 3 days' labor every week on the lord's strips of land. Miss a day because your child was sick? You faced fines or the whip. The fields were divided in strange, long, narrow strips. One family might farm soil so poor it barely grew turnips, while their neighbor's strip overflowed. Crop rotation was a clever trick they learned. Wheat one year, beans the next. Then let the land rest. But famine lurked constantly. A bad harvest meant eating acorns, bark, or even grass. Thomas watched his father plow with a heavy wooden plow pulled by oxen that were worth more than a human life. One day, a lord's hunting party trampled their crops chasing a boar. The peasants could only bow their heads. Complaining meant losing everything. Yet, in this harsh world, strange kindnesses appeared. Neighbors secretly shared milk from a shared cow, whispering that God sees the poor. Afternoons brought the village bustle. The blacksmith was like a wizard, hammering iron into tools while sparks flew like tiny stars. Peasants believed metal had protective powers against evil spirits. Mothers tied iron nails around babies' necks for safety. Women like Thomas's sister Agnes worked the garden and tended the alehouse. Medieval beer was safer than water because boiling killed germs. They brewed it weak for children too. But strange rules governed everything. The local miller took a huge cut of every grain sack as payment. Many suspected millers of stealing extra flour. Rumors said they had secret compartments in their mills. At night, the village church bell rang for curfew. Everyone had to stop work, but whispers spread about wise women who gathered herbs under moonlight for love potions or healing charms. The church called it witchcraft, yet peasants quietly visited them when the priest's prayers failed. Life balanced between faith and forbidden folk magic. Even in this grim world, joy existed in the strangest forms. On holy days or after harvest, the village held festivals. Imagine people dancing around a bonfire while a lord of misrule, usually the village fool, took charge for one wild night. Servants could mock their masters without punishment. Traveling minstrels arrived with lutes and wild tales of knights and dragons. Children played games like Hoodman Blind, Early Blind Man's Bluff, or kicked inflated pig bladders as balls. But entertainment carried danger. A mummer's play gone wrong could spark fights. And during the rare Feast of Fools, people wore animal masks and paraded backwards on donkeys. Turning the world upside down for a day, for Thomas, the strangest sight was the dancing plague that sometimes swept villages. People danced uncontrollably for days, some until their hearts gave out. Doctors blamed demons or poisoned bread. To us it sounds insane, but to them, it was just another mystery of their cursed yet magical world. As darkness fell, the real terror began. Rats scurried through the thatch, carrying fleas that spread the Black Death. In 1348, whole villages vanished almost overnight. Bodies piled up while flagellants whipped themselves in bloody processions, begging God for mercy. Peasants wore strange charms, garlic, amulets, or prayers written on parchment and swallowed. Thomas lost 2 siblings to fever, yet the family endured. They believed in purgatory, a place where souls were cleansed before heaven. This strange hope kept them going. When the Lord died, they paid Heriot, the best animal, as tax, and kept farming. Life was a cycle of birth, backbreaking work, superstition, and small joys. By the flickering rushlight, Thomas's mother told stories of a better world beyond. Peasants rarely traveled more than a few miles from home, yet their imaginations reached the stars. They lived short, brutal lives, average age around 30, but their strange resilience built the foundations of modern Europe. Thomas's older sister Agnes was 14 when her marriage was arranged. No love stories here. Parents swapped daughters like bargaining at the market. The bride price? A few chickens and a promise of strong hands for fieldwork. On wedding day, the couple jumped over a broomstick instead of exchanging rings. If the bride stepped on the groom's foot first, she would rule the house. Strange beliefs said that spilling wine on the wedding dress guaranteed many children. Babies arrived fast, but half never saw their first birthday. Midwives used herbs and prayers, yet many whispered that fairies swapped healthy babies with sickly changelings. Kids like Thomas worked as soon as they could walk. No school, only the priest sometimes taught lucky boys to read Latin prayers. Girls learned to spin wool on a drop spindle while minding younger siblings. Games were simple but wild. They rolled wooden hoops, wrestled, and told ghost stories about the wild hunt. Ghostly riders who stole naughty children. Parents carved wooden toys, but the strangest toy was a pig's bladder inflated into a ball. One mistake and a child could lose a hand in the mill. Childhood was short and dangerous. Peasants wore rough wool tunics that scratched like thorns. Bright colors were forbidden. Only lords wore silk and velvet. In winter they layered everything, stuffing straw into shoes for warmth. Women wore long kirtles and covered their heads with linen veils. Going bareheaded was considered sinful. Strange fashion rule, long pointed shoes called poulaines were so ridiculous that the church banned the craziest lengths. Lice were constant companions. People shaved parts of their heads to control them. Every village had a patron saint. Thomas's family prayed to Saint Blaise for sore throats by holding 2 candles against their neck. People traveled miles to touch holy relics. A splinter from the true cross or a saint's finger bone, believing they could cure blindness or raise the dead. Fake relics were everywhere. A traveling monk once sold feathers from the Holy Ghost. Faith mixed with desperation created a world where miracles felt possible every Sunday. When Thomas fell sick with fever, the barber's surgeon arrived. He cut open a vein and drained blood into a bowl, believing it balanced the humors. Leeches sucked on skin, and horrible-smelling poultices of dung and herbs were smeared on wounds. Toothaches? The barber yanked them out with pliers while you bit on a stick. Amazingly, some herbal remedies actually worked. Willow bark for pain, like early aspirin. But many died from the cure itself. Crime was judged harshly. Steal a loaf of bread? You might lose a hand or be put in stocks for public shame. Murderers were hanged, drawn, and quartered, their bodies displayed as warnings. The strangest trial was trial by ordeal, holding a red-hot iron or plunging your hand into boiling water. If the wound healed cleanly in 3 days, God declared you innocent. Peasants lived in fear of the Lord's court, but sometimes found clever ways to settle disputes with riddles or wrestling matches. Spring brought hope. Planting beans and barley while singing work songs. Summer meant backbreaking haymaking under a blazing sun. Autumn was harvest festival time, but also slaughter month when they killed most animals because winter feed was scarce. Winter was darkest. Families huddled around the fire, telling stories while snow blocked the door. One bad season could mean starvation. The cycle felt like an endless, strange wheel controlled by God and weather. Pigs, chickens, and cows lived inside the hut at night for warmth and safety. The family ox was treated like a treasured family member. Losing it could mean ruin. Cats were respected for killing rats, but black ones were still feared as witches' familiars. Thomas once saw a wolf that turned out to be a starving dog. Superstitions said roosters crowing at midnight warned of death. Animals were both friends and food in this harsh, magical world. Rare visitors brought excitement. Peddlers carried ribbons, knives, and gossip from distant villages. They told stories of the Crusades, faraway lands, and the latest scandals at the royal court. Peasants traded eggs for needles or salt. Salt was so valuable it was called white gold. These strangers also spread rumors of wars, plagues, and miracles that kept hope alive. After sunset, the world belonged to spirits. Peasants believed the dead walked during certain nights. They left out food for ancestors and avoided crossroads where demons gathered. Thomas shivered hearing tales of the church grim, a ghostly dog guarding graveyards. A single candle burned all night to keep evil away. Sleep was light, filled with prayers and fear of the unknown. While men worked the fields, women ran the household economy. They brewed ale, baked bread, spun thread, and cared for the sick. Some became respected healers, yet the law treated them as property. A widow could sometimes run her husband's land, a rare taste of freedom. Their lives were a strange mix of heavy labor and quiet power that held families together. Every year the Lord took his share, the church took its tithe, 1/10 of everything, and the king demanded more for wars. Peasants paid in grain, eggs, or labor. Hiding crops was common but risky. The strangest tax? Mortuary. The church claimed the best animal when someone died. Many families went into debt they could never repay, trapped on the land forever. Even after the Great Plagues, smaller outbreaks terrified villages. People carried sweet herbs in pouches to purify the air. Flagellants marched whipping their backs until bloody. Thomas watched neighbors lock themselves inside, only to die anyway. Survivors believed God had spared them for a reason. Some even thought the world would soon end. Christmas brought precious meat and singing. Easter meant eggs dyed with onion skins. But Carnival before Lent was wildest. People ate, drank, and danced like there was no tomorrow. Masks hid identities, and normal rules vanished. It was a strange release valve in their tightly controlled lives. Peasants rarely saw the king, but his wars changed everything. Young men were taken as archers. Those who returned brought strange tales of French battlefields and new weapons. The 100 Years' War felt endless. Victory or defeat, the poor always paid the price. Skilled peasants joined loose guilds. The thatcher who repaired roofs was treated like an artist. Wheelwrights made carts that lasted generations. Their knowledge passed secretly from father to son, creating pride in a world of hardship. Romance happened despite arranged marriages. Secret meetings in the woods were risky. If discovered, the couple might be forced to marry or face public shaming. Gossip spread faster than fire. Everyone knew everyone's business. Few lived past 50. Grandparents told the best stories around the hearth. When they grew too weak, younger family members cared for them, a sacred duty. Some villages had almshouses run by the church for the abandoned elderly. The hearth fire was life itself, but one spark could burn an entire village of thatched roofs. Fire wardens patrolled at night. People believed bells could drive away fire demons. Losing your home meant total ruin. Every dream had meaning. A falling tooth meant death in the family. Seeing a shooting star? Make a wish quickly. Birds flying in certain patterns predicted the harvest. Peasants lived by signs from nature and heaven. By the late Middle Ages, rumors of distant cities and universities reached even remote villages. Some bold young men ran away to become apprentices. The world was slowly changing, though most peasants stayed tied to the land. When someone died, the body was washed and wrapped in linen. Bells rang, and neighbors brought food. Graves were shallow, and families paid for masses to speed souls through purgatory. The strange belief in ghosts kept the dead close in memory. The best time of year. After bringing in the crops, huge bonfires lit the night. People ate, danced, and thanked God. Even the Lord sometimes joined the feast. For a few days, life felt less strange and more blessed. Long nights meant storytelling marathons. Families mended tools, told legends of King Arthur, and prayed for spring. Some turned to poaching the Lord's deer, a dangerous but tempting crime when bellies were empty. Thomas grew up, married, and had his own children. He never left his village, yet his bloodline helped shape the future. Medieval peasants. Strange, superstitious, resilient, built cathedrals, fed nations, and survived horrors we can barely imagine. Their quiet strength echoes through time, sections 1 to 30 complete, perfect for a long-form YouTube video, around 35 to 45 minutes with narration and visuals.